Welcome everyone. My name is Virginia. I am the head of content and programs here at Advaya, and I'm very honored to be here with Manchán Magan. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge something that is really important. When Manchán and I first spoke today, we considered canceling, given the immense passage that he's navigating at this moment. But with his blessing, we're here. Blessing and excitement, we're here. And it feels a truly profound privilege for me to accompany even a small piece of this journey and to hold space for your words and presence, Manchán. It is my deep honor to welcome today's guest, Manchán Magan. Manchán is a writer and documentary maker known for illuminating the deep-rooted connections between language, landscape, and culture in Ireland. His books, including Listen to the Land Speak and Wolf Men and Waterhounds, reveal the ancestral wisdom encoded in the Irish tongue and its bonds with the natural world. He has created dozens of travel and culture documentaries and hosts the Almanac of Ireland podcast for RTE. He makes his home beside Lachlan, I don't want to butcher these words, I'm so sorry already, and Westmeath, in a grass-roofed house in Oak Woodland where he lives closely with bees, hens, and the rhythms of the land. So Manchán, welcome, and thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Virginia. It's so funny that we're still having to learn how to occupy these new realms that we find ourselves in. Last week I did what I thought was going to be the big and sort of final interview. No, I didn't. It was just an interview actually for RTE, the national radio, talking about my Irish books on language, on landscape, etc. And that was last Saturday. And I was very honest about this illness, this prostate cancer that I got like two years ago now, but then slowly spread. Prostate cancer is a very easy disease to manage and relatively, but mine became this very rare stuff. So that was last Saturday. By Tuesday, I realized, oh no, the chemo wasn't working. Cancer's in my liver, in my lungs, in my brain. It's just right through me. So on Tuesday evening, we decided, okay, we're going now to hospice care. I'm staying home with my partner here. But I really wanted to do this chat because all my life, genuinely all my life, but definitely in the last decade, it's been about summoning up these new ideas about the importance of the insights that language and lore give to landscape and the insights that landscape give to lore. You can basically change any of those words around. They all offer new realms. So I just thought it'd be lovely to have this opportunity to talk to Advaya about it all.
Thank you. And thank you, honestly, for being so open. And for me, it's a really new experience. I really appreciate this very, very much, the openness and the truthfulness to the situation. It's beautiful to know. So I said your name was very poetic, so I want to start with that. Tell me about your name, Manchán.
Yeah, it does show the variety, the malleability of any old language, of any ancient language. The old languages, they're just so full, so rich in dialects, because every community is just connected within that. There's these micro spores, these micro ecologies of languages and terms and words. So within Ireland, my Irish is from the southwest of Ireland. So there to be pronounced Monaghan. Monaghan is how I'd say my name. But I live most of the time, well, a lot of the time in Westmeath or in Dublin, in Leinster, in the east of the country. And there it'd just be Manchán, because we've lost a lot of the tones of the Irish language. But then up in Donegal, where they're still connected more to Scots Gaelic, to the Scots Gaelic, and even to the languages of the north there, it'd be Monaghan. Monaghan would be my name there. So it can go from Man to Manchán to Monaghan. And the meanings can even shift. So it can be Monaghan, little monk, or it could be Mungan, who is a supernatural god, a son of the great supernatural god of the sea, Manannán mac Lir. So it can go the whole way from being a saint, a Christian saint, to a deity of the sea. And the name had died out. The name had died out until the 6th century. And then about the 12th century, so it was in regular use until the 6th century, yeah, so 1,400 years ago. Then it died out. Then poets started writing romantically about this figure who lived in the oak woodlands with his own trout growing nearby, or growing in the rivers nearby, and he had leeks and he had vegetables and he had honeybees there. So he was living in this idyllic haven, this paradise. And then I come along then, whatever, 1,000, 2,000 years later, with this, somehow my great grand uncle and aunt, who were Celtic scholars, decided to revive the name and bestow it on me. And now we're bringing just as I'm bringing this name from a different culture, from a different people, from a different world into the future, all of us are now bringing elements of whether it's Indian culture or Hawaiian culture or Aboriginal culture. We're all involved in the same awakening and realizing that nationalism is so less bordered, is so more amorphous than we normally think.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Someone said that it's a shape-shifting name, and I feel like so many words are shape-shifting as well in general. Like even my name once, it goes from being virgin to the Queen of Fire. And I read this whole story of my name, and I was like, I like the Queen of Fire more.
The idea of skim. So skim in Irish means a thin sprinkling of tiny bits of dust or a flour on a table. So skim can be dust on a mantelpiece or flour on a table, but it can also mean that fairy mist that covers the land in the early morning.
Mm.
Skim. And it can also mean a magical vision. And skim can also mean succumbing to the supernatural world through sleep. Skim, succumbing to the supernatural world through sleep. Like to have a word with that many ranges makes us immediately break down the sort of more logical, analytical type of conditioning that has taken forth within us in recent decades or maybe centuries even.
It's so interesting. So you've spent your life listening to the land and to language as carriers of ancient wisdom, and standing now close to another threshold. How do land and language speak to you differently, if at all? And what teachings are arising at this moment for you?
I mean, if I had the energy, I would be starting now to write a book on death, language and death. The amount of books that I already want to write that I haven't got to write, so that question would even frighten me to even think about. But like one beautiful way I look at it is there's these in Irish. I remember, so we had a house in West Kerry. That's the Gaeltacht. That's the Irish speaking area. Very, very different area compared to the English speaking areas. Just as I said, because the words are all so different. The insights that you get on the land are so different. So it was only when I bring friends down from school did I realize, oh, wait there, we see things in a different way. Like I'd be up on that lovely pagan idea that Easter Monday, the sun dances in the sky. You find this in among cultures all over the world, including Christianity. The Easter sun is well, for Christianity, it's that everyone is so delighted that Jesus has come out of the tomb again. But in Irish, in English, it's just dawn or daybreak is the words for it. But in Irish, there was bracha an lei. My granny used to wake me up on purpose to get out and see the different stages, to see bracha an lei, which means the brightening of the day, or bánu an lei, which means the whitening of the day, or fáinne gal an lei, which means the first bright ring of the day, or súl an lei, which is the eye of the day. And then finally, there's Irene Negrena. And Irene Negrena means the sunrise itself. So when you have a language, and Irish is not unique in having 5 different words for sunrise, but when you have any of these old languages that were observing the world for so long in specific ways, in very nature-rooted ways, in ways that were meant to basically provide that extra insight that we needed to truly, yeah, to truly understand our surroundings. So like if you're living here and again, people in Ireland haven't been living here, humans haven't been on the island for all that long. We've been here so we arrived just after the end of the last ice age. So what's happened? Where my numbers have gone out the window now? As I said, there are bits of cancer in my brain now. So bits. So 2,000, 20,000. Yeah. No, that idea. I'll have to come back to that number. There were people living in Ireland for 10,000 years, and there were people living in Britain for 10,000 years before that. So Ireland was covered by this ice sheet thick layer of ice, of Arctic tundra. So people couldn't come out here. So the people in England looking, there's our dog, and would slowly came across the island. And they observed because they needed to uncode the land so they could live on it. So we noticed that there was a huge areas that were living underwater. This thriving, sustainable way of living was there by tuning in to the waves and the currents, to the sea creatures, to the plants, to the rocks and the strands, seeing the practical uses of those, seeing like in a word like barhog, which is barhog, a fisherman. This is told me this out in Lettermalin at West Connemara, and he says you could see this. Well, I can't see it, but he knew exactly where it was. It meant there was an underwater reef. And from that reef, there would be kelp seaweed growing on it. Yeah. And among that kelp forest would be these mangachigas balachi, which are fish, ballon wrasse and pollock fish. So I couldn't see them with my own eyes. I said modern fishermen think they don't need them because they have radar and whatever sonar and whatever. But like within the words was the knowledge of how you could feed yourself, how you could get an abundance of kelp, of seaweeds, of nutritious winter vegetables in a way, a kelp, or of these fish. So once we throw away an old language and think these words aren't so important, we forget that even in those like coastal words, there's an information about all the different types of seaweeds that are in different parts and when they're best used, all the fish, how the fish relate to the shellfish, how they relate to the different coastal pressures and tide heights, but also the seasons. So it's
Mm,
almost unlimited the amount we can understand from a culture by keeping that vestiges of its old language alive.
I love that. I think there was one word which was, I don't remember the word, but it was about the sound of the water coming in and out during the night. I was
Yeah,
like, oh my God, so
they're
poetic.
so beautiful. And in fact, there were different versions. So I got one Suhin on Aaron Moore of that word, Suhin. And there was another word up in Donegal. It was rustling around. In the Aran Islands one, it sounds almost like as if gravelly water being sucked through your teeth. There was that
Mhm.
sound. And as you said, particularly there was a meaning. They said that if you heard that at night, it was often a foreboding sound. It meant that potentially, yeah, a storm could arise in the coming days.
It's just so poetic and beautiful. There's also in another interview, you speak of this word for a mountain pass, which is a place of passage that reminds us that we're never entirely safe. And I actually love that you said, like you said, we need to know that we're not safe all the time and that we cannot control nature. And I thought that was such a powerful message. And especially when so much of our culture is built on trying to control and secure and control nature as well. And I wanted to know if you can share a bit more about this kind of teaching.
Again, it's a lovely, humbling concept of realizing that we are definitely not domineering nature and we are ideally working in harmony in nature, but more than that, we are in service to nature because that there are places in nature that can cause us great distress and great harm. And a mom is the word you're talking about, a mom, M-A accent M. So a very long A on that mom. And again, in my Gaeltacht in Connemara, we had emphasized that. Sorry, in Munster Irish, others mightn't go so heavy on that A, but it means it's basically a saddle in a mountain or a low point in a mountain ridge. So it'll be the easiest point to go over one mountain to get onto the other one. It was also a great meeting place, Bodden the Malma, the place where you'd meet up, because that was the most naturally placed to have to your track to go through, particularly because if you were on the high point of the ridge over the mountain, you were going to get blown out of it. So you want to keep as low as you possibly could at the lawn and seek out that. And so it became a spiritual place. So still at a lot of these and these low edgeways, easy ways of getting across the mountain, you would have, now we see chapels, early Christian churches, maybe not churches, chapels, very simple structures from about 800 or 1,000 years ago, but then also standing stones, carved stones, some early Christian, but some pagan, some before that. And then even some like holy wells as well, some sacred wells. So the area was considered for, definitely during Christianity, but also way, way back. Christianity arrived obviously to Ireland since with St. Patrick in 437 AD. But before that, the pagan tradition had been so strong. And what's so beautiful is that so much of that pagan understanding of the world remained alive, definitely until the famine of the 1840s, when we realized that there was this danger that actually our culture might be lost entirely because we weren't able to eat anymore. There was plenty of food in the country, but the British weren't allowing us access to it. So there was this point then when we knew, okay, no, we need to preserve these aspects of our language and of our culture. And that idea of these holy wells, being at a place at a mall, being at the mountain pass, was so much because a holy well, it was just another sanctuary place. It was a place that people could meet. And a holy well isn't somewhere you take water for as a practical or utilitarian place. There are other wells which are utilitarian wells. A holy well is an area where the elements, the indigenous element of water is connecting with the indigenous of rock, of the stone, of the geological system and geographic system that brought you there. But also at a holy well site, there will often be the well, can often just be a little cup hole in a stone, or it can be a deep, deep rock-lined well. or it can be even a shallow basin. It can be, relatively modest and small, but it has continual spring water going through it. And you'll have some formidable rocks, some noticeable, some potent rocks. And I don't know, how do you describe to someone in the 21st century, what does a formidable rock mean? Or what is a noticeable rock? It is a rock with integrity, a rock with essence, a rock that wants to communicate with you. And the only way of knowing how it wants to communicate, well, there's a few different ways, but one is just going to Ireland. We're lucky because we can just follow the road signs. There are road signs to, there's well over 4,000 holy wells in Ireland. A lot of them have these holy wells assigned to us. You go to the sign, you go down the little Bohoreen. Bohoreen means a cow track or the cowway, little road. You find the holy well, and then you just sit there and watch. Often the well will be covered over with water mint or wild mint or with watercress or with some herb that is helping to keep that water fresh from too many midges or mosquitoes landing on it, but also out of the midday heat. But you'll also have these rocks, as I said, arranged, well, both either allowed naturally to be as they were in almost like a Japanese worshipping of nature as it is, or sometimes molded to create a particular shape. The third element you have the water itself connecting with the rocks. The other element is trees. There will often be a sacred bush or a sacred tree connected to that well. So it's because the well is a little oasis in a way. It is providing shelter in the sheltered spot where the rocks surrounding the well are providing shelter for that one tree or that one bush to thrive. It becomes this little ecosystem, it becomes this microsphere of the wider world. And like, we're living in 21st century Ireland now. We have Google, Intel, all those Facebooks, they're all headquartered for Europe and Africa in Ireland, at least so many of them are. And yet we also have an abundance of these wells, more sacred or holy wells than anywhere else in the world, not just per capita, but like no other country still has 4,000 or 5,000 sacred wells still extant. They were everywhere. There was nothing unique about Ireland. Sacred wells are just part of how humans related. Like when I work with Aboriginal elders, the water holes, there'll be way more water holes than them. And each water hole will have story, sacred story to their people. So what we need to do is just track these cultural elements back to any culture. It doesn't matter. We don't need to go back to our own homeland. We might have been raised, our grandparents might have been raised in Poland or in Bolivia or in Panama. It's just about realizing that humans made their land sacred. And some of the key elements that were sacred. So when I work with Indigenous or Aboriginal people anywhere in the world, they bring me to those sacred things. They bring me to the water. They bring me to the sacred plants and trees. They bring me to the rocks. We share these elements. And so there's nothing elitist or nothing marked off or exclusive about Ireland and its culture. We're just another expression that because we were on this wild Atlantic island off the northwest coast of Ireland, we were ignored. We were allowed to have these elements kept pure and, I said, basically ignored because they weren't making money from big multinationals. So we're fortunate in that way.
You're such a great translator. Before you were saying, how do you explain something stone? And I thought it's like someone trying to explain contemporary art to an audience, and you do it so well with nature. So I really love that. I think we're due a check-in. How are you feeling?
I think you can see, like, I am adoring this. I'll probably
Yeah,
be here
you're loving
hours later. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity. And thank you to all the listeners to have the understanding to let me lie down in my bed, like not even bother and get up, for God's sake.
it.
But
Of
so I'm
course.
great.
I feel it feels very intimate in this circle. It's like we're a bit family. It's really nice. Okay, well then we shall continue. And people are sending a lot of love, we can see. So I don't know what question to ask. There's so many. You've revived so many forgotten Irish words that carry worlds inside them, as you just explained, words that reveal our ancestors saw the land and its mysteries. Do you have maybe some words that feel specifically particular to you right now, or do you have any companions at this time?
Yeah, there are. There's something that only recently dawned on me. And I mean, I can't say that because one of my books, Listen to Land Speak, it talks a lot about trees. I'm trying to write a book at the moment, and I know I won't get it finished if I really have as short a time as doctors seem to be telling me. But about the indigeneity of Irish culture. Now, that's a very complex word. Ireland, as I said, is not an indigenous people. That is a term used for specific people with specific rights on the UN treaty. Well, there's loads of ways of defining it. But I just love this idea that other cultures, Irish, Mexican, whatever else, Dominican Republic, can realize we kept a lot of the ancient ideas of our people alive. And the one thing that's really getting me is the trees and the deer in Irish culture. So every school child, we still learn our mythology in Irish schools. We all learn about Fionn and the Fianna. So Fionn was this chieftain. He was this warrior chieftain. And his name comes from Fionn, which means Fionn. It either means, well, Fia is a deer, so it's from deer, but also Fionn means fair, fair-haired Fionn. So Fionn, the white or the pale-haired Fionn, and also the deer man from Fia. But there's another meaning as well, because Fia, as I said, Fionn means pale. It also means transparent. He's Fionn, he's a man who can see through the world and access the knowledge on the other side. Yeah. And so he was the great warrior hero. And where did he live? He lived in the woodlands. He spent his whole life in the woodlands with his Fianna, who were his warriors. His deer warriors are also tree warriors. Fia actually means a deer. It also means wild. It also means tree. It's like they're everything getting us. So the richness of tree words is something that's really exciting me. Like even in the place names of Ireland. Ireland used to be called, an old name for Ireland long ago was Inish na Bhíche. Inish na Bhíche. So the island of the woods. We were known as the place with the woods, the land of the woods. And so the first man is said to have sprang from an alder tree here. And the first woman is from a mountain ash. But again, it's very hard for us who were never reared a mindset of myth, of what it means, where a culture will claim that the first man was alder and the first woman from mountain ash, to mean all the resonances that has. So we sort of, all of us, need to go back to schooling in a way. And what does it mean when a culture claims that all its men, all its people come from particular trees? But even the provinces of Ireland, there's 32 provinces in Ireland, or sorry, counties in Ireland. We have 4 or 5 provinces. Take forever to get into that. But 32 counties, and about 4 or 5 of them are named after trees. So Roscommon was a county in the sort of northwest Midlands, and it's from Cummon's wood. Ross is just a woodland. Mayo or Mayo, the land that suffered the worst during the famine, where a third of the population was wiped out, means Ma-o, the plain of the yew tree. The yew tree was a very sacred tree, as well as a very strong and practical tree, which we see a lot in Ireland. Just like with Native American sites, the buffalo is a sacred animal, but also because it's the most practical, the most useful animal. Being practical also meant you were sacred. So, well, we've Roscommon, we've Mayo, we've Monaghan, another county, Monaghan, Muinachon in Irish, very, very similar to my name, Monaghan. It means wooded hill or field. There's Derry, the contested county up in Northern Ireland. Derry comes from just the Irish word dira, which is oak, which is by far the most, and you could say, the most sacred, most potent river tree in Irish tradition. There's Kildare as well in the south of Ireland, in Leinster. Kildare, it means kill, the church of, or quill can also be the wood of. In this context, be the church of Dara, of the oak wood. So 5 of the provinces of 32 are named after trees. Of the 60,000 townlands in Ireland, I think there's 13,000 that are named after trees. And just so whether it's beth, which means a birch, or cull, which is a hazel, or scach, the words, it just seemed everything was rooted on trees. And maybe in a pre-Iron Age world, where we didn't have other things, maybe they were obviously of great importance from practical points of view. But it's back to this idea of the buffalo and the cow. The buffalo, the buffalo is sacred because he's practical, but also because he's sacred. So he's sacred because he's practical, and he's practical because he's sacred, almost both things. And so, again, last week I had a book come out called 99 Words for Rain and 1 Word for Sun. And you can do this with any culture. If you look at what languages do a particular culture tend to have a lot of, what was their fixation with? Well, it's so interesting that there's only 1 word for sun in Irish. We really didn't have much use for the word. There's loads of words to describe a bright day or a shiny day or a glimmering sunny day. But the word sun itself, there's only 1. Whereas there's well over 100 for rain. In the same way with trees, there's like so many different words for different types of woodlands. So I said Fiava is a forest, Fia is a forest as well. Russ, I mentioned, was a forest. Tronach means a wooded place. Did I mention is an oak forest? Treve, a branch or branchy place, or otherwise a forest. Fahad is a wooded hollow or a steep forest. Mon is a marshy woodland. Capach is a decayed wood. foscuil, a young grove. So imagine if we still did have those words in our mind, on our tongues, it would give us a very, very different relationship with the woodlands around us. We would then begin to notice, was it one that was steeped in water? Was it boggy? Was it gnarled? Was it healthy? Was it thriving? Was it a rich, verdant forest? It was surrounded by wilderness all around it. All of those words just help to enrich and to strip back layers of that distance that we can develop between us and nature.
Beautiful, thank you. I almost forgot that I have to interview you because I was listening and I was like, yeah, yeah. And then I was like, oops, I have to ask questions. Thank you for this. This is so inspiring. And I also something that I noticed is that even if you do talk specifically to Ireland, I mean, I'm Italian, so not Irish, but I resonate, and there are certain words, and in some of the languages that I know, there are certain words that are just so specific to the land and to the language. You're really inspiring me to dig deeper into that. So I'm very appreciating. Thank you for that. Something that I've noticed in your work and in what you say is that there's so much spaciousness and lyricism in the Irish language, also in your name. And it feels like it invites a slower way of seeing and speaking of it really invites like a deep observation. Just give a word to the sound that the sea makes at night when it goes in and out. It's quite, and I wonder what this can teach us in our fast world, what it can teach us about moving with the rhythms of life and of the more than human, if it can.
I often think the best way of describing how Irish and other old languages describe nature is almost in a childlike perspective. The last thing is it's trying to have a scientific, detailed description. It's just trying to capture the essence of a bit of nature, and often in a very playful way, which is really interesting. We never think of scientific nomenclature as being playful, but the school children are loving now that the Irish word for jellyfish is smuggerleroin. And smuggerleroin basically means seal snot. Seal, so it's a snot produced by seals, and that's how jellyfish is formed in the water. It's such a lovely poetic idea. Or how the Irish for a spider is dawan Allah. And basically it means dawan is a little ox, Allah of the cliff, the little ox of the cliff. Now, why our ancestors long ago decided that a spider was going to be called the little ox of the cliff, or groinog, groin is a hedgehog, and groin means a sort of horrid or nasty. So it's a nasty little thing it's trying to tell us. There's this playfulness. It's not seriousness. Like some of the bird words are beautiful. So drolling taspig means the grasshopper, but it literally translates as wren of hot weather. The wren of hot weather, and Jolene taspig, that's the grasshopper. Or then Jolene Counvey is the goldcrest. And so again, to give a direct translation, Jolene, which is a little wren, Counvey of the gold chested or the gold headed. And then Diarmid Riavach is another word for that same thing for the goldcrest. It's a striped little Diarmid. And Diarmid was just a common person's name back then. It wasn't, we didn't call ourselves Tom and Pat or Sean. Diarmid was one of the common names. So a lot of our bird and nature names, we just said, oh, that's Diarmid, or that's William of the big chest, or of the cowpats, which is like of the cow dump. So they'll say a little bird who hangs out picking insects from cow manure will just be said, oh, that's Jimmy, or that's Vincent of the cowpats. It's a playful way of looking at nature. And often it's said phenomenally beautiful. The word for the snipe, the male snipe, is gower jorach, the crying goat. Bleating sound, that's a repetitive chipper sound it makes. Chipper, chipper, chipper. It's just like that. It's just like the crying of a goat. There's also neascach for a snipe as well, neascach, which means a little oaf, sorry, or a clown. And again, maybe because that annoying sound it makes all night long, a snipe, if you have one on the hillside behind your house. There's a phrase, an fadvig neasc moin, no gub irri. So to describe a very, very long time. So as long as there's a snipe on the bog or a bill on her, as long as there's a bill on the snipe or there's a snipe on the bog, that meant until the very ends of time, eternal, because they couldn't imagine it without it. I'm struck by me as I'm now sort of facing these last few weeks of life that you think, oh yeah, these things are forever. Until then you realize, oh, maybe they're not forever, as forever as you thought.
I love how you said it before we started, that you didn't know if you could talk about a lot of words. They're just coming out. So I think
They,
you're
they're
like,
bubbling.
don't ask me about words. I don't know what I'll do.
They're bubbling. There's one that's just coming to me now as well. There's a word, lovely word, marcacher chiongáin. Marcacher chiongáin. It means a rider on an ant's back. It's describing someone who does something stupid or ridiculous.
Mm,
Like I often wonder, I wonder when I talk, should I talk about, and I could talk about the nature elements of the Irish language. There's the insights it gives us into nature, but there's also the insights it gives us into spirit. And obviously they wouldn't have seen any difference between the two. They were both one. Even the illness I have is Ailse. Ailse means cancer. But Ailse also means a particularly evil or nefarious type of fairy. So they
mm,
had a sense long ago, yes, you could, this little demon, this little nasty little fairy could come into your body and take over. And so then Brayon Ailse is a chemo drip, a chemotherapy drip thing I stopped taking last Tuesday. But then Brayon Ailse can also mean the magical droplets that fall on the tombs of certain tyrants causing rot. Brayon Ailse, the magical drops that fall on the tombs of certain tyrants causing rot. There was this idea that spirit world, like there was just so many different words in Irish that were infused entirely with this spirit example. And something I've talked about, like definitely internally for the last 5 years, it seems, since I first started writing these books, focused on these things, was the idea of the difference between counter and alter. So counter is just a very common word in Irish. We all learn it in school. It just means a place or region, locality. And its opposite is alter. So the alter is, if counter is this place, this region, alter is the other region, the other world, the place beyond, the nether realm. Agus a gcónaí bhí sé so hiice nach raibh ach barna óna haní the counter agus alter. It was always understood there was only a very thin line between counter and alter, between
mm,
the world that we occupied in now and the world that, well, to be fair, I'm spending a little bit more time in now, the more expansive beyond realm.
mm,
And I don't know, I think it will really help us to make sure that whatever languages we do speak in the future do maintain those expansive understandings of existence and reality and of being in the world.
mm. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to ask you a big question.
Oh,
So you've lived a life immersed in language, land, community, and I know you've traveled the world and you've met with many communities and peoples around the world. And from all these journeys, what do you feel? What does it mean to be human, and how, if at all, does that connect to what we call spirituality?
yeah. And it's what I've been trying to explore, to be honest, both in my life and in these recent books. So I'm 55 now, and I would have spent a decade making travel documentaries around the world with minority cultures in the Irish language. Great opportunity that came to us by 1995, where the Irish National State Broadcaster was willing to allow me and my brother make these, go off to China, the Middle East, South America, Africa, and make these programs with minority cultures. And then eventually, after 10 years, it hit me. I realized, wait there, so many of these cultures I'm coming across have similar mindsets and worldviews and Weltanschauung and like worldviews to us in Ireland. And how could that be? Like, how, when I go to Aboriginal Australia, do I have people there talking about these underwater wells that exist out beyond the coastline, where the water, fresh water bubbles up? And so our fishermen know that they can put a mug or tankard of water into the sea and they drink fresh water. They have that because they said, well, we know that because we remember our ancestors lived out there 10, 15, 20,000 years ago. And they told us that the water was fresh. There was a good well, freshwater well. So we know that that's where they must have lived because they described the landscape, but now it's just got covered in the sea, in the ocean. But we have the same stories in Ireland, the very same stories, that you can go out to places off the southwest coast of Ireland. You can go out to places off the south, and you can again put your cup of water into the sea and get fresh water out if you need that too. So yeah, just that idea that if we look at, we can look at, do you remember so right what I said right at the beginning? We look at language, our lore, our landscape. They all bring us back to the same thing. Mythology and lore, language and landscape, they're all intertwined. They're all different aspects of both human culture, but also the divine, the sacred, and nature. And I know when I was brought up, when I was young, I just felt alienated and lost. The sparsity, the thinness of the culture that was being given to us, American, European culture in the 1970s and 80s, was just so debilitating. So I fled, I traveled, I went off to all these places, South America, Africa, for just backpacking really, and began to see things that opened my mind. And then I made that connection and realized, wait there, a lot of these are in my culture too. So having spent the 10 years making the documentaries with my brother, I then spent another maybe 10 years researching, particularly the first book, which was 32 words for field. The first book, I mean, about the Irish culture and things. And yeah, spent exactly this next 10 years, for 7 years writing that book, 32 words for field, and then the next few years writing the books that have come since about these ideas. And there's so many books waiting. Like I have a book that I'll bring out next year called, oh, do I know the name of it yet? No. I mean, I won't be here to see it, but the book will come out. And it'll be links between Ireland and Aboriginal Australia, which again are uncanny and impossible. Like Australia, Aboriginal Australia is a 45,000-year-old culture, possibly 60,000 years. And yet, how can they have anything to do with a culture in Ireland that's 10,000 years, or with our cousins in England, 20,000 years? But yet they're there, and we need to explain it. And obviously they are there because we are all nomadic people. We're constantly moving around the planet, moving around the world. And so it was only natural that we would have these similarities in our culture. And it just strikes me that now is a time where it's really important that we do accept and explore these elements. Because if we don't do it now, well, when will we?
Yeah, and perhaps it's also beautiful to know we see things sometimes in such a similar way, and it feels very connecting when we're constantly separated.
We're going to ask you two questions. One of them is mine. I have to ask you. So, the sound ecologist Gordon Hempton, one of his many magnificent findings is that the rainforest and a cathedral have the same acoustics. And it's just, isn't it so marvelous? And so, I wonder if you have, over the course of your work, discovered any of that natural reverence that we appear to have for nature showing up in the built environment in ways that have really surprised you.
Yeah, I have. First, I have. A lot of it is just me reading the work of other people. But like it has become very clear now, and there was a group from New York University who came and did acoustic measurements on the passage tombs. In Ireland, these passage tombs, these entranceways into a secret temple space at the center of our ring forts, that's on so many of the important mountains of Ireland and hills and mountains of Ireland and Scotland and different parts of Europe too. There are these rock mounds right on the top, and the center will be a chamber, a sacred chamber with rock art on that chamber, carved into that chamber. And the chamber will be built 4.5 or 5,000 years ago. And so what they're finding is if you chant sound in there, it will be very different from its resonance if you chant it on the surface. And then if you bring seed into that area, and I think, isn't it, because people are finding this in Native American pyramid sites, if you chant in near those or in one area, it seems to change the fertility of the seed. This is all work that I don't know has been fully proven yet, but people are exploring it. So this idea that those chambers, we know that if you go into a special church or a building or a chamber or a cave, most clearly, you feel it in different parts of your body. So the Irish were said, according to Julius Caesar and the other Roman and Greek scholars, the Irish worshipped in Nematah. When he says the Irish, they mean the pre-Christian Irish, the pagans, and the Druids, the people who followed, made Druids. Druid means, well, anyway, people who followed the way of the oak tree, most likely. The Druid. Sorry, what am I saying? The Nematah. Yeah, this will be my final point because I realize my brain is dragging. I've lost it. It's gone. It's gone. It's gone.
It's okay. It's okay. If it's gone, it was meant to go. If you want, we can stop here, or there's one final question, but we can stop it. So
No, we'll stop. If that's okay with you, I'm going to
of course,
rest.
totally. Thank you so much for
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
giving us the time, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Sending you lots of love. Everyone's sending you lots of love.
Thank you.
And to your wife as well. We
Yeah.
talked before.
Take care. Big love to you. Bye.
Don't stop your journey here. Unlock more potential with this recommended content.